Barron Trump sat comfortably in his first-class seat, gazing out the window as the plane prepared for takeoff. At 18, he was no longer the quiet boy the world once knew, but a young man with a quiet confidence. His tall frame and composed demeanor made him stand out, yet he remained humble despite his famous last name. As he adjusted his seatbelt, a quiet commotion caught his attention near the entrance to first class. An older man, tall and lean with a weathered face, stood speaking with a flight attendant. Barron immediately recognized him, Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor and director. Even at 94, Eastwood carried an unmistakable presence. However, something seemed off. The attendant looked apologetic, explaining that there had been a mix-up, and despite his status, Eastwood's seat had been downgraded to coach. Barron didn't hesitate. He unbuckled his seatbelt, stood up, and approached the flight attendant. "He can have my seat," he said simply. The attendant's eyes widened. "Are you sure, Mr. Trump?" Barron nodded. "Absolutely." Clint Eastwood turned to him, eyes sharp, but filled with gratitude. "Son, you don't have to do that," he said in his signature raspy voice. Barron smiled. "I insist, sir. You deserve it more than I do." After a brief pause, Eastwood nodded, accepting the offer. "That's mighty kind of you," he said, shaking Barron's hand. Barron grabbed his carry-on and made his way toward coach, not expecting anything in return. He found a seat in the middle of a crowded row, squeezed between two passengers, but he didn't mind. He put on his headphones and settled in, satisfied that he had done the right thing. About an hour into the flight, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement. We have an American icon aboard today, Mr. Clint Eastwood." A wave of applause spread through the cabin, and we also have a young man who showed remarkable generosity, Barron Trump, who gave up his first-class seat for Mr. Eastwood. Now, Mr. Eastwood has a few words he'd like to share. The intercom clicked, and Clint Eastwood's voice came through, calm and steady. "I've been around a long time, seen a lot of things, but kindness like this is something you don't see every day. This young man showed real class, and I just want to say, Barron, you've got a good head on your shoulders. We need more of that in this world." The cabin erupted in applause. Passengers turned to Barron, nodding in admiration. He gave a modest smile, but before he could say anything, a flight attendant approached him. "Mr. Trump, Mr. Eastwood has a request. He'd like you to join him in first class." Barron hesitated, but eventually agreed. When he arrived back in the first-class section, Eastwood gestured for him to sit beside him in the now empty seat next to his own. "You've got good instincts, kid. Ever thought about acting?" Barron chuckled. "Not really. I'm more into business and technology." Eastwood smirked. "Well, if you ever change your mind, I know a guy." They spent the rest of the flight talking about movies, leadership, life. By the time they landed, Barron had a newfound respect for the legendary filmmaker, and Eastwood had a renewed belief in the next generation. As they stepped off the plane, cameras flashed, capturing the moment. The story quickly went viral, praised as a rare act of humility and respect. But to Barron, it was just the right thing to do. As Barron and Clint Eastwood walked through the terminal, a small crowd gathered, some whispering excitedly, others raising their phones to snap photos. Barron, used to attention but never one to seek it, kept his posture relaxed, while Eastwood, ever the cool and collected legend, barely seemed to notice. A reporter from a news outlet rushed forward, microphone in hand. "Mr. Eastwood, Mr. Trump, can you tell us what happened on the flight?" Before Barron could speak, Clint Eastwood gave a signature squint and said, "The kid's got class. That's all there is to it." He patted Barron on the back. "Not many folks these days would give up a first-class seat for an old cowboy like me." The reporter turned to Barron. "Mr. Trump, why did you do it?" Barron shrugged slightly. "He's a legend. He deserved it more than I did. Simple as that." The humility in his voice struck people. In an era where most would have filmed, the act for social media clout, Barron had done it quietly without expectation. That only made the gesture more powerful. By the time he reached baggage claim, social media had already exploded. The video of Eastwood's in-flight speech was trending, with headlines praising Barron's kindness. Tweets flooded in, "Respect for Barron Trump, raised right." Clint Eastwood and Barron Trump, legends from two different generations meeting. In the best way possible. This is the kind of news we need more of. While waiting for their luggage, Eastwood turned to Barron and said, "You know, I wasn't kidding about knowing a guy. I've got a film in the works, a role that could use a sharp young man. Nothing big, but it could be fun." Barron raised an eyebrow, surprised but amused. "I appreciate that, sir, but I think I'll stick to my own path." Eastwood chuckled. "Smart kid. Just don't rule anything out. Life has a way of surprising you." With that, they shook hands one last time before going their separate ways. The moment, though brief, left a lasting impact, not just on them, but on everyone who witnessed it. Barron didn't think much of it afterward. He went about his life, pursuing his ambitions, staying out of unnecessary spotlight. But every now and then, he'd get a message from someone who had heard the story. "Saw what you did for Clint Eastwood. Inspired me to do something kind today." And that, Barron figured, was worth more than any first-class seat. Months passed, and the story of Barron Trump's gesture continued to circulate. It had become one of those rare viral moments that wasn't controversial or divisive, just a simple act of kindness that people respected. One evening, Barron was at a private event in Los Angeles, invited by a mutual friend in the business world. He wasn't one for Hollywood parties, but he had made a few connections since the incident with Eastwood. While he was sipping on a club soda, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "Didn't think I'd see you here, kid." Barron turned around, smiling as he recognized Clint Eastwood. Though a few months had passed, the old filmmaker looked just as sharp and commanding as ever. "Mr. Eastwood," Barron said, shaking his hand. "Good to see you again." "Clint," the actor corrected. "You earned that right." Barron chuckled. "Fair enough." Eastwood gestured for him to follow, leading him to a quieter area of the venue. "I wasn't joking on that plane, you know," he said. "I've got a film coming up. Could use a fresh face for a supporting role. You wouldn't have to do much. Just be yourself. Think of it as an experience, not a career move." Barron thought for a moment. He had never seriously considered acting. His interests were in business, technology, and making a name for himself outside of his family's legacy. But there was something about Eastwood's offer that intrigued him. Maybe it was the idea of stepping out of his comfort zone. Maybe it was just the respect he had for the man. "I appreciate that, Clint," Barron said. "I really do. I'm not sure acting is my thing, but I'll think about it." Eastwood gave him a knowing look. "That's all I ask." Before they parted ways, Eastwood leaned in slightly. "One last thing," he said. "You didn't just give up a seat that day, you reminded people that decency still exists. That's worth more than any role in a movie." Barron nodded, understanding the weight of the words. He hadn't done it for attention, for fame, or for praise. But if his small act of kindness had made even a small difference, that was enough. As he left the event that night, Barron found himself thinking about the unexpected turns life could take. Maybe he'd take Eastwood up on his offer. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, he knew one thing for sure. Doing the right thing always had a way of leading to something even greater. A few weeks after the event, Barron received a call from an unknown number. He usually ignored such calls, assuming they were spam or business inquiries meant for his father, but something told him to answer this one. "Hello? Barron, it's Clint." Barron sat up a little straighter. "Clint, good to hear from you. Hope I'm not disturbing you, kid," Eastwood said in his usual calm but commanding tone. "I just wanted to check in. That role I mentioned, it's still open." Barron smiled to himself. He admired Eastwood's persistence. "I appreciate that, Clint, but I don't want to waste anyone's time. I'm not an actor." "You don't have to be," Eastwood said. "The role isn't complicated. Just a young guy with quiet confidence. Sound familiar?" Barron chuckled. That's clever. Look, Eastwood continued, I don't hand out opportunities lightly. You've got something that can't be taught. Presence. And I think this could be a good experience for you. Even if you never act again, it's worth stepping into something new. What do you say? Barron hesitated. He had spent years trying to stay out of the spotlight, careful about his public image. But at the same time, he respected Eastwood, and he trusted that the offer wasn't some gimmick. Clint Eastwood wasn't the type to play games. All right, Barron finally said. I'll give it a shot. Eastwood chuckled. Good man. I'll have my team send over the details. We start filming next month. And just like that, Barron Trump found himself stepping into Hollywood. Not as a star, not as a name riding on family fame, but as a young man taking a chance on something new. The first day on set was surreal. The film was a classic Eastwood project, gritty, introspective, with an old-school cinematic feel. Barron's role was small, but it mattered. He played a young entrepreneur caught between two worlds, a character with depth but minimal dialogue. Eastwood had been right. He didn't have to act much, just be himself. As the cameras rolled, Barron delivered his lines naturally, earning nods of approval from the crew. After one particularly strong take, Eastwood leaned back in his director's chair and gave a signature squint. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all. Barron grinned. Coming from you, I'll take that as a compliment. As the weeks of filming went on, Barron found himself enjoying the process. Not just the acting, but the discipline, the teamwork, the artistry behind it all. He had never seen himself as part of this world, but he respected the craft. When filming wrapped, Eastwood pulled him aside. You've got a future in whatever you decide to do, Barron, he said. Just make sure you choose your path, not the one others expect of you. That advice stuck with him. Months later, when the film premiered, Barron attended the event not as a celebrity, not as a political figure's son, but simply as part of the cast. When the credits rolled, and his name appeared on the screen, he felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Reporters asked if he planned to pursue more roles. Barron just smiled and said, I'll go wherever life takes me. As he left the theater that night, his phone buzzed with a text from Clint. Told you it'd be worth it. Proud of you, kid. Barron looked up at the Hollywood skyline, thinking back to that moment on the plane when he had simply given up his seat for a legend. He had never expected anything in return, but sometimes life had a way of rewarding kindness in the most unexpected ways. A year passed and Barron Trump had returned to his normal routine, focused on his business ventures and personal growth. The movie had been a success, not a blockbuster, but a critically acclaimed film that further cemented Clint Eastwood's legendary status. Barron's role was small, but people took notice, especially those in Hollywood. He started getting calls. Directors, producers, even agents reached out, offering him roles, endorsements, and opportunities in the entertainment world. Some wanted to mold him into a leading man, others just wanted his name attached to their projects. Barron politely declined most offers. He wasn't interested in fame for fame's sake. But one offer stood out. A renowned director, known for making deep, thought-provoking films, reached out personally. I saw what you did with Clint, he said over the phone. You have an authenticity that Hollywood is missing. I don't want you to play a role. I want you to be you. That intrigued Barron. He wasn't interested in playing pretend, but if there was a way to be part of something meaningful, something that resonated beyond the screen, maybe it was worth considering. Still, he hesitated. He had always envisioned his future in business, in technology, maybe even in philanthropy. But Clint Eastwood's words echoed in his mind. Choose your own path, not the one others expect of you. One evening, Barron sat in his apartment staring at the script the director had sent him. It was a powerful story, something that spoke to real struggles, real challenges. It wasn't about politics, wasn't about family names. It was about being human. His phone buzzed. A message from Clint. If you take this, do it for the right reasons. Not for them, not for the fame. For you. Barron exhaled slowly. He picked up his phone and dialed the director's number. I'm in. Filming for the new movie was different from his experience with Clint Eastwood. It was more intense, more emotional, requiring Barron to dig deeper into himself. But he found himself enjoying it not because of the cameras or the attention, but because it felt real. During filming, he met people from all walks of life, actors who had struggled for years, crew members working tirelessly behind the scenes, writers who poured their souls into the script. For the first time, he saw Hollywood not as a glamorous industry, but as a place filled with real stories and real people. When the movie finally premiered, it was met with standing ovations. Critics praised Barron's raw performance, calling it unexpectedly powerful, and proof that sometimes the best actors are the ones who never intended to act at all. Reporters swarmed him, asking if this was the start of a Hollywood career. Barron smiled, the same quiet confidence he had always carried still intact. I don't know, he said simply. I never planned for any of this. But I've learned one thing. Sometimes life takes you places you never expected. And maybe, just maybe, that's the best part. As he walked away from the flashing cameras, his phone buzzed again. Another message from Clint. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all. Barron chuckled to himself. If life had taught him anything, it was that the best stories were the ones you never saw coming.